and welcome to the LIFT Summer Institute convening. Tonight, we will hear about the work being done at the Student Speaks project at the Youth Advocacy and Policy Laboratory at Harvard Law School. This is very exciting work, and I am pleased to introduce Michael Gregory and Marisa Del Rosario, both colleagues and friends, longtime friends, who have been leading this work from its inception. Mike Gregory is a clinical professor of law at the Harvard Law School and faculty director of the Youth Advocacy and Policy Lab. Marisa Del Rosario is a trauma-sensitive school specialist for the Trauma and Learning Policy Initiative. And as I said, both good friends and colleagues. So I turn it over to Mike and Marisa. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Joe. Great to be with everyone this evening. As Joe said, my name is Mike Gregory, and I'm the director of the Youth Advocacy and Policy Lab, or we like to call it the Y Lab, at Harvard Law School. And our mission at the Y Lab is to advocate for youth-serving systems that are trauma-sensitive, healing-centered, and anti-racist, and that center the voices of young people in all decisions that affect their lives. In the true spirit of a laboratory, we have a lot of initiatives going on at once. One of our longest standing initiatives is the Trauma and Learning Policy Initiative. And I'll turn it over to my colleague and friend Marisa, who will tell you about TLPI.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Joe. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Marisa Del Rosario, and as Mike says, and Joe said, I'm a trauma-sensitive school specialist here with TLPI. TLPI's mission is to ensure that all students, including those impacted by trauma, succeed at their highest levels in school and in life. And importantly for us, we define trauma to include harm stemming from individual adverse experiences as well as from structural inequities. To achieve our mission, TLPI engages in just a range of different advocacy strategies, including supporting schools to create safe and supportive learning environments. And today we're going to be talking with you about an important initiative called Student Speak, which is a platform that supports young people to raise their voices about what they need in order to do well in school. And this afternoon, we are joined by three amazing young people, our experts, who are co-presenters with us. Each is a member of our Student Speak leadership team, or YLT. And so we just want to take a moment for them to introduce themselves to you. So Ethan, I will pass it over to you so you can introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name's Ethan. I'm a youth with Student Speaks, specifically one of the youth leaders in Y Lab. And I'm also part of a small organization out in Springfield called Out Now.
And Melina, we'll pass it over to you to introduce yourself.
I think, Marisa, we're getting a message that Melina's having a little bit of trouble with her technology. So.
Thank you, Mike. I didn't see that. Thank you. So we will wait and introduce Melina when she is able to join. And let's see, Mondi, are you there and able to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Mondi, and I am with the YLT program, and I am also part of another program called Kids Connect YMCA. And I'll pass it on to Michael.
Great, thanks, Ethan and Mondi. And we look forward to introducing everybody to Melina when she gets her technology worked out. I think Marisa is going to share a little bit about our agenda for this evening and the information we want to share with you. And while she does that, I'm going to pray that my technology works and try to bring up some slides that we'll be showing throughout this evening's presentation.
Thank you, Mike. So we thought it might be helpful just to give a little bit of a roadmap of how we'll spend the next hour with you. Just briefly review some of the things that we'll be talking about in today's keynote. We'll start today by sharing some information about what student voice is and why it's important, and also some of the ways that we've observed in our work, student voice making a positive difference in helping to create safe and supportive school learning environments. And then we'll also Mike will introduce the Student Speak initiative to you more specifically, how we came to focus on student voice, and tell you about some of the things that we do through Student Speak. And then we'll hear from our experts, Ethan, Melina, and Mondi, who will share more about Student Speak, different components of the program, and their own experiences as youth leaders in the program. And we'll also share a bit about some of the priorities that have emerged over the years of working with young people, and think about and share with you some of the ways we think this work can translate into school settings. So maybe we can start with our first slide. And so to start us off, I wanted to just begin by talking about student voice, why it's important, what it is. And so let's see. Okay, thank you, Mike. Sorry, I was having trouble seeing the slide. So student voice is really the creation of opportunities for authentic student input or leadership in things like curriculum and instruction, school structures, policies at schools, all of the things that can promote meaningful change in school by empowering young people as change agents to work in partnership with adults. And that's what we'll talk with you a little bit more about through our Student Speak initiative. What you see here on the slide are several journal articles, and we just wanted to take a moment to sort of lift up the academic research that has demonstrated consistently that when students have a voice in how their schools operate, their schools improve. And research documents that when students experience a lack of voice or uncertainty about their sense of belonging, their motivation and achievement can be undermined. But conversely, practices that promote trust, such as increased opportunities for voice and agency in school, can enhance students' sense of belonging at school and improve their academic achievement. So go to the next slide. Thank you, Mike. One study that is here looked at the outcomes of elementary age students engaged in student voice efforts. And sometimes I think we think about how can we do that at the elementary level, but this study really demonstrated that the authors were comparing their experiences in this research in terms of also examining what happens at secondary school with student voice, which is where it's more common to think about the inclusion of student voice. But the work that was done in this study with fifth graders really found marked similarities in the growth of students' sense of agency, their sense of belonging and competence, sort of the ABCs, right? As the fifth graders participated in this study, the ABCs of youth development. So we found that to be a really important one to highlight. And next we'll highlight one of the studies that we looked at that really underscores the importance in terms of working with secondary students. This was an important study out of Chicago, which asked a question, does student voice relate to academic outcomes? And what the researchers found was that when students had the opportunity to raise their voice in school-based decision-making, and when they felt that the adults were responsive to their voices, their grades went up, so higher GPAs, and their attendance improved. It's important to note that that adult responsiveness that they're talking about in this study meant not necessarily that the adults agreed with or did everything the students were asking for. It meant that the students felt listened to and taken seriously by the adults in their school. And the next slide, Mike. Thank you. Finally, we wanted to share a little bit about what we've seen in our own work in terms of some of the ways that student voice has contributed to making a positive difference in helping create safe and supportive schools, which include increasing student voice, helping to create conditions that support young people to feel empowered and connected to their schools, increasing student voice, helping for the decisions that are made in the school to better reflect the students' need and their lived experiences, so that those decisions are really solving the issues that the students are raising. that increasing student voice can shift existing power dynamics to sort of balance out that power so that students feel a stronger sense of agency and experience sort of the empowerment that we were talking about earlier. And that increasing opportunities for student voice really helps support students' sense of belonging in their school. This idea that when you have a say about what's happening at school, you're sort of motivated and connected and engaged in the problem solving. And so the sense of belonging increases. So I now want to hand it over to Mike, who will introduce you to our Student Speak initiative.
Thanks, Marisa. And what I want to do is share a little bit about the origin story of Student Speak and why we at YLab and at the Trauma and Learning Policy Initiative came to prioritize the incorporation of student voice in school decision making, and in particular, why we came to see that as being an essential part of creating safe and supportive schools, of creating trauma-sensitive schools. Now, I know that many of you who are joining us tonight are probably familiar with TLPI's work, and many of you have participated in the amazing coursework that LIFTS offers, which, of course, features TLPI's work. You may be familiar with the Purple Book, Helping Traumatized Children Learn Volume 1, and the Teal Book, Helping Traumatized Children Learn Volume 2. And so TLPI has been working for the past several decades to partner with educators and learn about what schools can do to transform their school culture. In particular, to create learning environments where everyone feels safe and supported, and to build a community where everyone, children and adults alike, feel a sense of belonging. We've learned over the years that that's really the crux of what it means to create a school that's responsive to the needs, not only of children who have experienced trauma, but really all children. And of course, TLPI has developed the inquiry-based process to help schools transform their culture into these caring, compassionate, safe, and supportive environments. And a critical feature of that process is to give all school staff a voice in making decisions about how to address the urgent issues in their school. So we have been doing this work, including with many of the folks who are joining us tonight, and realized after several years that as important as it is to involve all educators' voices in creating the culture of the school, we were still leaving out a really important constituency, and that was the students themselves. So, Marisa just shared with you some highlights from the academic research base about how important student voice is, but we didn't know any of that research at the time. We just had an instinct that we needed to start listening more to the students themselves. And so we didn't really know how to go about doing that, but we just started by convening some focus groups. In fact, we convened about a dozen or so focus groups across Massachusetts so that we could begin listening to secondary school students. And what we did is ask them the question that Marisa shared with you a few minutes ago, this question, what do you need in order to do well in school? And we also asked questions like, what does a classroom where you do well look like, sound like, and feel like? And what about other spaces in your school building? Spaces where you feel this sense of safety and support. What do those spaces look like, sound like, and feel like? And from conducting these focus groups and listening to all of these young people answer these questions, we were blown away by the insight, the perceptiveness, and in many ways, the simplicity of the things that they shared with us. Some of which dovetailed with everything we've been hearing from educators about what it takes to create safe and supportive schools, but some of which diverged. And so the big learning from conducting all of these focus groups was we knew that we needed to transform our work. And that creating trauma-sensitive schools, although it's very important that that work begins by setting the foundation of involving all educators in decision-making in their school, it can't end there, that it has to build on that and take the next step of involving students in the process as well. And so that's what led us to create the Student Speak initiative. We knew that we had to go beyond just one set of focus groups and make listening to students a perennial part of what we're doing at TLPI and at the Y Lab. And so Student Speak is how we're doing that. Well, we keep talking about Student Speak, but what exactly is it? Well, it's an initiative that's part of YLab, and it is connected to the legal clinic that we operate at Harvard Law School, where we are teaching law students how to be lawyers and advocates on behalf of children and young people. And so through this program of Student Speak, graduate students at Harvard, not only law students, but also students from the Graduate School of Education and increasingly other schools at Harvard, provide one-on-one mentoring to youth leaders and help to develop their leadership and advocacy skills and support them to build a movement for youth voice in educational decision-making across Massachusetts. Our youth leaders work on skills like public speaking, facilitating meetings, leading committees, advocating with policymakers, and organizing coalitions of supporters. All of the kinds of skills that are necessary to play a role in democratic advocacy and decision-making processes. This is our website of Student Speak. I think Patricia helpfully put in the chat the URL a few minutes ago. And so please feel free to click it and to peruse the website while you're listening to our presentation this evening. We partner with 6 after-school programs in communities across Massachusetts, in Chelsea, Brockton, Lowell, Haverhill, Amesbury, and the greater Springfield area. And each of these programs nominates 2 to 3 students to serve as youth leaders. And these leaders not only participate in this mentoring I've described and work with the staff at YLab, but also design and then facilitate educational programming for their peers back in these after-school programs. Now, all of this work is guided by adult allies, the clinical supervisors at Harvard Law School like Marisa and myself, as well as program advisors in these community-based programs. But increasingly, we're trying to move the program more and more in the direction of being co-led and co-facilitated by the youth leaders themselves. So that's our basic structure. What we're going to do next is allow our youth leaders, our experts, Ethan, Molina, and Mondi, to share with you some of the specific components of Student Speak that they have participated in and what that experience has been like for them. So we'll start with Ethan, who will talk about a process that we've developed for helping young people create written testimony and then go to the State House on Beacon Hill in Boston and share with legislators what they need in order to do well in school. And then Molina will come on and she will share with you about the annual Youth Summit that the youth leaders put on every April at Harvard Law School, where they teach their peers about youth advocacy and activism. And then Mondi will share with you about the youth leadership team that we just inaugurated this past year as a way to bring the young people into the leadership of the program more directly. So we'll hear from each of them. And what I want to really encourage everybody to do is we are prepared to take your questions. So this webinar format can be a little, it can feel a little passive for the audience, I think, but we'd like to push back on that and try to make it as interactive as possible. So the students are really anxious to take your questions, and you can put them in the Q&A tab, and I'll be monitoring those, and we'll sort of take your questions as we go along. So in fact, I'm about to hand it over to Ethan, but before I do, I'm going to look and see if we have any questions in the chat window yet. We don't, but I hope it will become very active as we go. So Ethan, I hope you're ready. I'm going to turn it over to you and invite you to share with everyone about the testimony process and how it has led to our legislative briefings at the State House.
Well, hi everybody. As you guys know, my name is Ethan. And as Mike said, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the process that we all went through these past 4-5 years. I myself have done this 4 times with the actual testimony writing. Um, and the process is really fun to go through as a student. Um, we all meet with mentors, as Mike said. Student Speaks engages in these mentoring relationships between the college students and the students making the testimonies. Um, we develop a written piece, usually about the different issues and with the change we want to see in our schools, and that piece is co-created. I can tell you from personal experience that when I met with a mentor, what they would do is I would speak my words, right, give my ideas, and the mentor's job in that space is to help you collect your thoughts and guide you to a actual well thought out, well spoken piece that you can present and be proud of. It helps you collect your words and express your voice in a way that makes sense not only you but the people around you. Lets you convey your ideas phenomenally. Um, that's like I've had five of these mentors now, um, and each one has been amazing. Of course, each one has their own strengths and weaknesses, but you learn, especially if you stick with the mentoring program, so much from each one. I've been transformed a time and a time again, learning different skills, building my leadership and my speaking and my writing skills, just as I've been here with Student Speaks, and that's before I even joined the Y Lab. Um, on to the briefing. Uh, the briefing is this massive event where these testimonies that the students work on with their mentors come to life and are actually presented. Um, the students who choose to will get up on stage in front of a room full of adults, legislators, or legislators representatives, and then give their points. They'll read their testimonies and and this is the part where I have seen and experienced probably the most personal growth. Um, I would say that this experience, from what I've heard from my peers that have also done the testimonies, is one of the most transformative things as a student you can go through. Not only does it give you the opportunity to actually give your presented piece, but the confidence that gets instilled within each and every student that goes through this is amazing. I can tell you that two of my friends from Out Now have done this program with me, and I have never heard their voices sound that different. Like, unironically, it feels like they unlock something within themselves, and you can see a visible difference in the way they get from the way they are before getting on the stand to the way after. Um, like there tends to be overarching themes within these statements too. Equity, uh, sorry, I'm blanking. Things like equity and student-teacher relations tend to be two massive topics. Uh, Students like myself, I'm queer and Hispanic, I have ADHD, all these intersections combine when you read these statements and share them, and you realize the experiences that these students go through on their day to day, not just as their individual identities, but as the coalition of all of the elements that make that student and the way it interacts with their environment. I remember another girl, she's Black and Muslim, and that experience alone is so much different from what a lot of us can even imagine to live in our own lives, right? It's not an abnormal thing out in the world, right? Entire countries run under Islam, right? But here in the States, it's not something we focus on. It's something a lot of us barely even imagine in our day to day, right? So it allows these students who have these identities and have these thoughts to express them and actually feel like they're being heard in a very real, concrete way. Um, students, ah, students get the opportunity to talk in this room to people from their own towns, their lawmakers, people that represent their own home areas. I know I talked to my representative, Adam. I always forget his last name. I always blank.
I think it's Adam Gomez, right? Senator
Adam
Gomez?
Gomez. There you go. I'm from Chicopee, or not from Chicopee, but I live in Chicopee. I'm originally from Florida. But I was able to actually talk with him, experience what it's like to be in a room with all these people, and the way they pay attention, the way they actually listen to what you're saying, and they're able to like have a conversation with you as an equal, as somebody that has never had an experience like that, right? Being in the same room and being looked at eye to eye is an incredible experience. And it not only gives us the opportunity to hear that and be listened to, but it allows these lawmakers and legislators to actually hear the students' experience from the students themselves. And then we have the photo on the staircase. This is all of the students and a lot of the adults that worked in the testimonies and legislative briefing. And actually, they're in the front next to two of my Out Now people in the black jacket.
Right.
The confidence and the yeah, they're right there where the mouse is. The confidence in the community that springs, not even just the individual statements or how it makes students feel. The community that you can feel in that room in that moment is something that you don't really get often. You get students from all different backgrounds, from that have different points of view, interacting in such a mature and real way. Being in high school, you don't really get that kind of interaction often, right? It's blocked by class shifts, by student dynamics, even by just how some classrooms are run. We don't get that interaction in such a deep, rich way. And when you come here, not only do you get the interaction, but you get the interaction with people who really care about what's being talked about. It's truly rejuvenating.
So, Ethan, let's transition now and talk about one of the other opportunities that young people like you have through Student Speak to raise your voice. You want to talk about current conversations?
Yes, indeed. Current conversations. These are students' answers to some really important, hard-hitting questions that we've been asking over the years. Put into these videos filmed at Harvard. Like, we catalog these interviews on the Student Speaks website, and I myself have watched all of them. There are a few themes that pop up over and over again, obviously, but answering these questions, you'll see some pretty obvious points. The importance of student and teacher diversity. Sorry, the reflection of the student body on their staff, seeing people like you teaching people like you, so that you can actually see yourself in your school. Like the curriculum changing to fit the student body, seeing your own experiences and your own backgrounds in the actual content. And then you see over and over again how students benefit from these open teaching styles and strong student-teacher relationships. Like each and every one of these videos answers certain questions, and you get the answers so clearly. You like their voices are so immense. Sorry, I get nervous.
You don't seem nervous, Ethan. You're doing great.
Thank you.
Let me actually say that we've had a couple of questions in the Q&A.
Beautiful.
And I would love to know what you think about these, Ethan. So Kyle is asking, like, what's the best way to identify students who should participate in a program like this? What would you say about that? Who are good candidates for doing a program like this?
Well, from what I've seen, any person who has complaints, really. I know I started originally pretty quiet with Student Speaks and even out now where I work in Springfield. Um, and students of all different personality types, with all different kinds of backgrounds and ideals, tend to find a pretty nice spot in Student Speaks, as long as they have something strong to say and experiences to back it, right? Which most students nowadays do.
Yeah, I would really agree with you. I mean, I would say that when we launched Student Speak, it was really important to us that it be a program that can work with really a student from any background, any kind of learning style or learning difference, or any kind of sort of positionality within the school. What we saw is that so many student voice initiatives or leadership opportunities tend to gravitate to the same set of students, who are the student council presidents and the, I don't know, students who sort of fit a certain cookie cutter mold. And it's lovely, to give those students a voice. I mean, every student should have a voice, but there are lots of students who often, it seems, are left out. And we really wanted to make a program that could work for everyone. And honestly, we've had so many different, as you've already shared, Ethan, so many different kinds of folks stand up at that podium and give a speech at the State House. I would really say it's open for everyone. Everybody who's impacted by a decision wants to feel that they have some agency and voice in contributing to what decision gets made. It's not just one kind of student who feels that way. And then another question, Rachel wants to know, what impact have these testimonies had with lawmakers? Can you give an example of a change they made? And Ethan, I'm actually remembering one of the last times we were at the State House together, and you visited not Senator Gomez, but Senator Jacob Oliveira, who's also from your neck of the woods. And remember, he sat on the front of his desk and we were all in his office. And do you remember what came out of that meeting?
Yeah, when you talk to these senators and legislators, you realize how much they actually care, right? He was so genuinely invested, and what you'll see after something like this happens is their listening ears, for lack of a better word, turn right on. I have never seen an adult more engrossed in what I was saying about my own school, and after the fact, something that we've actually worked on in Student Speaks with the YLT, we've been looking at legislation and stuff like that about equitable schools, about teacher diversity, about all these questions that we've been asking and been getting responses for. And it's not a stretch to say that the testimonies may have had an impact on those decisions. Am I wrong?
I think that's absolutely right. And so, not only have some of the legislators that you all have met with, like what you're sharing, is they've subsequently introduced bills to address the issues that you've raised with them, but even in a more localized way. I remember Senator Oliveira in that meeting said, "I'm going to commit to following up with the superintendent in a particular school district where a student had been raising an issue." And so he did, and then followed up with the student and tried to address the problem they were raising. So we've seen it have quite a big impact, Rachel. These are great questions. And Dion, I see you have a question as well about specific changes to school communities. And we're going to hold that question because we're going to talk about lessons from all of this work for schools. But we're running a little bit behind schedule. So we're going to let you pass it off, Ethan, to your colleague.
Yeah, I'm going to pass it right off to Melina then.
Thanks. We'll see you again in a bit.
Oh,
Hi,
hi guys.
Melina. Welcome.
Hi. Sorry I didn't get to properly introduce myself earlier. I was having some technology issues. I am Melina. I'm also part of the Wild Teen with Girls Inc. And today I'll be discussing the Student Speak Youth Summit. I've also only been in this youth summit, I think only 2 times, so I still have a little bit of experience, but not as much as Ethan. But the annual Youth Summit is a day-long event that is held at Harvard Law School, where young people from towns across Massachusetts come together to learn and develop advocacy skills. The summit offers opportunities for young people to get out their comfort zone and grow professionally and personally through one-on-one connections with students. From diverse backgrounds, they're able to connect around issues that are important to them. Personally, when I had came there, everybody had a different story from them. So even with that, everybody was able to connect, and that also meant something. That way, it was just so comfortable and easy just to speak. It also creates a supportive environment so that young people feel comfortable speaking their minds. It gives an experience to everyone in the room, and everyone is invited to share the mic and tell their story or offer their perspective. Same thing as you guys are all here. We also want to learn something from you guys too, which is really important to us in knowing your point of view. The summit is sorry guys. The summit is youth led, and the summit is planned by young people. And the activities are led by young people, which is also known as Young People for Young People. This allows young people to share their perspectives, empowers them, and helps them build connections. Young people are more engaged because young people are leading. Same thing as if you're raising your hand, you have a question, but seeing someone else raise their hand makes you want to raise your hand too. Just a little example. And now I'll be handing over to Mondi, who will tell you about the new youth leadership team that Student Speak launched this year.
Awesome. Thanks, Melina. Glad you got the technology working. Hey, Mondi, welcome to the stage.
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mondi, and I am proud to be here to talk about a program that means a lot to me, Student Speak and YLT. Student Speak is a program that encourages students to voice their opinions and concerns in school or at any point of life. I joined the program last year and was able to attend the legislature to share my experience at school and ask lawmakers to ensure that there are enough school counselors for everyone, for all students. Through participating in Student Speak, I was given a platform where my voice and concerns are valued. It feels empowering to be able to voice my opinions and concerns about school, and for lawmakers to be able to hear my concerns and respond to them. This has not only made a difference for me, but for my fellow peers as well. This year, I joined Student Speak YLT, or Youth Leadership Team. The YLT is currently made up of 14 youth leaders who came from different towns throughout Massachusetts, such as Haverhill Hills, Amesbury, Brockton, Chelsea, Lowell, and Springfield. With support from the Y Lab, with support from the Y Lab staff, students can build advocacy skills. My role as a student leader, my role as a youth leader was to lead program full of other students to turn our local struggles into actions that address our concerns in school. Throughout the school year, I helped my peers think about the problems or issues they experience at school and identify the root cause of these issues so that we could advocate and take actions. This experience brought up a question. Can we find new ways to elevate student leadership, not just not just in clubs or sports, but in community building and advocacy? Thank you for listening, and thank you to Student Speak and the YLT for giving us a voice. I was given a platform where my voice and concern are valued. And now I will hand it back to Mike, who will share some overachieving themes and lessons we have learned from listening to our peers and engage in all the students' voice opportunities over the years.
Thanks, Mondi. And also to Molina and Ethan, you really gave such a great summary of what Student Speak is. What I want to do is just share with everyone some of what we've learned substantively about what students have said about what works for them in school and what doesn't, what their answers are to this question, what do I need in order to do well in school? Now, you might think that after working with and listening to dozens of students over the past 5 years answered this question, that we would have heard so many idiosyncratic ideas that it would be impossible to address them all, that it would be sort of chaotic or overwhelming. But on the contrary, even though, of course, each student has their own unique story, students' answers to the basic question, what do you need in order to do well in school, have tended to emphasize the same four basic priorities they have for their schools over and over again. And those are the 4 priorities that you see on this slide. What we have on the Student Speak website is a page devoted to each of these priorities that has quotes from all of the students' testimony over the years that speak to each of these themes. And what I want to do is just share a little bit about each one of them. So the first and most important theme that has come up just, I would say virtually almost every student's testimony has been the theme of relationships. And more than anything else, what students have shared with us is that they want respectful relationships with their teachers. They've expressed how important it is for their teachers to believe in them and to understand them as whole people, not just as academic learners. And so as an example of this theme, one of the young people, Juan from Chelsea, said the following: teachers should focus on building relationships with their students. We need to know that teachers care. We want them to care about what we know and what we feel and what we need. Not only do we need to feel physically safe, but also academically safe to share our thoughts and contribute to class. And we need to feel comfortable enough to share when we are struggling and need support. The second major theme that students have identified over and over again is the importance of the quality of their learning environments. They've shared that they learn best in comfortable and calm classroom environments. These environments can be fun and also foster genuine learning and respectful peer and teacher relationships. So we've heard a lot from students about learning environments that don't hit this target. And so Chelsea, a former youth leader from Haverhill, shared the following as sort of an example of what doesn't work so well. Chelsea said, "Class is often the hardest place to be. I find myself sitting with idle time, unchallenged by content that is required but not an appropriate fit, and frustrated when told to just deal with it. It makes me feel ignored." But we've also heard a lot about what classroom and learning environments look like that are really positive. So Jada, also a student from Haverhill, shared the following: "In classes where my teachers recognize the good work that I do, I feel very confident in continuing to do that good work. I feel comfortable taking risks and asking questions, which helps me." Ooh, my screen shot up there. Let me try this again. "I feel comfortable taking risks and asking questions, which helps me to learn. I feel safer in the classroom and feel like there is a community." So the third theme that we've heard over and over again is what we call, actually what the students have called, genuine learning. That's a term of art they coined to stand for the idea that they want to feel the focus of their education to be concerned less with test scores and memorizing information and more about prioritizing making time for them to approach their teachers, to discuss topics with classmates, and to learn things in a deep way. So Omari, a student from Chelsea, spoke about this. He said, "I feel like there's a difference between doing the work just to do it and doing the work to understand it. And I know that I get more out of classes when my teachers focus on the latter. Having adults like these support me makes me more invested in my learning, which also helps me better understand the material itself." So genuine learning. And finally, students have emphasized the theme of equity, which means a couple of very specific things to them, or seems to. The first, and Ethan spoke to this a bit earlier, is that they've expressed the importance to them of having school staff who share or at least understand their backgrounds. And it also means seeing their backgrounds reflected in the curriculum of the school. So Chris, a student from Chelsea, said, "It would go a long way to help if there were teachers from the community who could understand the needs of students of color. I feel like if more teachers understood our backgrounds, things would go better because teachers would know how to talk to students and how to have relationships with them." And Emmeline, a student from Amesbury, also shared something really insightful. She said, "I have hundreds of years of rich history in my family and my culture, and this is only briefly covered within the content of my history classes. In our current system, many of my peers will never have their history shown in a classroom for the whole time they are in public schools, but we have the power to change that. So these four themes are what have come up over and over again in students' testimony. We sort of feel that it's our job as adult allies to help the students by synthesizing the themes that their peers and their colleagues are sharing across the state, so we can find out what the cross-cutting priorities and issues are. What we want to do next, and actually I'll just pause here and see if there's anything in the chat to address or in the Q&A, and I don't see any. So we're going to sort of move into the next part of this, and it actually goes to the question, Natalie, that you had put in the chat quite a while ago, which is like, how does this translate into a school setting? What are the everyday practices or approaches that can actually take place in schools? And I want to just say, before turning it back over to the students, that we recognize everything we're sharing with you tonight is from an extracurricular program. The mentoring that you've heard about and the trips to the State House are things that happen outside of the school day. And we're clear on that. But we do think, and actually the students have been really insightful about this, that there are some lessons that can be learned from the practices we've shared about this extracurricular program and actually be adapted for use during the school day in schools and districts across Massachusetts and across the country. So what I'm going to do is invite the students to come back in, and each of them has some lessons that answer this question. How can students speak inform student voice opportunities within schools? So we'll start with Ethan, and Ethan, you can share with us what some of your lessons are for how this work could feed back into the school day.
Hi, everybody. Once again, my name is Ethan, and I'm going to be talking about how we can adapt, again, that testimony and these current conversations into our schools. Number one of the biggest things that we learn from Student Speaks is that when given the opportunity, students are more than willing to voice their opinions, right? But one of the major issues when it comes to voicing opinions for students is that the current school environment has caused a lot of students to feel like they will not be heard, even if they would communicate any grievances they may have with the current system, right? We've had plenty of talks about things like surveys and polls or complaint boxes, anything like that where students don't quite feel heard. It's ways that we attempt to give them a platform to communicate their voice, but they don't quite feel seen or heard by that platform, right? And things like surveys try to get information from the students, yes, but fall short in the fact that the structure of a survey and the structure of these pre-written forms of feedback, right, already limit a student's ability to communicate what they might want to say, right? They're given a lot of the times they're given certain prompts to respond to. I've gotten surveys at my own school where I've had to do a multiple choice question with like how satisfied I am with a certain system, right? But then there's nothing beyond that for me to give specific examples, or when it comes to those prompts, expanding beyond that prompt doesn't seem wise to do in a survey. And I know that doesn't sound like a massive reason not to express my complaint, but if you look at it wider, you realize it's not just me that think that way or have thought that way when it comes to surveys. It's the wider population. That's the reason that we are bringing this up in the first place. And there are a few ways stuff like this can be changed, right? If we're giving a survey, maybe let the students know what it's being used for. Be transparent through the entire process, right? You get the survey and then tell them what it's being used for, either before they fill it out or after the results come through, right? Let them know what other students have been saying, and let them know what you plan on doing with the information you just collected. That small change can take a simple boxed in survey and give the students so much more agency on what information they want to give and what information they can give.
Yeah, Ethan, as
This
we
not
prepared for this presentation tonight, this was really one of the themes you just stressed over and over again was this idea of transparency and how important that is. That students really understand why adults are making decisions they're making in school, and that the results of things like a survey are shared in a very transparent way. That's a really powerful idea.
Yeah. The whole idea of the student testimonies before was giving students that platform to express their opinions in a pretty much unfiltered way in their entirety, completely. And a lot of the ways schools fish for that information, for that data to help improve themselves, don't allow students to give their full, true opinions. And that's just the testimonies. We have current conversations too. Current conversations with those videos, we ask these questions and we get those responses, right? But when it comes to a school environment, in order to get those responses from students, you need to make sure that you're giving them a platform where they can respond fully and accurately. And then again, that transparency is also part of it. If you're taking in this feedback, what are you doing with it? How do the students know that their feedback is actually going to be used? Because as I stated not too long ago, a lot of students already don't feel like they're going to be listened. And if you don't show them the results of whatever you're trying to look for, that's just reinforcing that idea.
I think that's a really important takeaway, Ethan, that you've given us. Transparency. That's a concept and a word that everybody can take with them from this presentation. What do you say we bring Melina in and hear what some of her lessons are? Well, there he goes. Hi, Melina. What are some of your lessons from Student Speak that could be adapted for the school setting?
Hi guys, I'll be discussing adapting the youth summit to schools. I had mentioned some points, and I'll be starting off with that schools can learn from the youth summit. That when young people are given the chance to lead by planning activities, whether it be events, other young people want to join too. When they're engaged, it kind of gives other people hope to be more engaged too when you're already set in that type of environment. Following into inviting guest speakers who share relatable experiences and who can connect with students. Creating more platforms for students to share their voice, let students know that they are listened to and adults want to hear them. Whereas, we want to feel reassured too, as you guys too. But also tying into that, more student-led clubs, giving students a say in what kind of opportunities exist at their school. At my school, personally, we had a students' voice club, and the account was led by students. Any updates was led by students, and it was just a great thing to have for that type of environment. And I also had mentioned mentoring. It can also create positive relationships. Schools could match older students with younger students to help support them with their goals and give them advice based on their own experiences and help shape their future. Personally, for me, I had at the youth summit, I had my own mentor, and it really got me out of my shell. And the fact that we weren't different in age, it also gave me a type of figure to look at, and it just made me get out of my comfort zone. Whether I used all I learned from the youth summit, I used it out of the youth summit too. The Youth Summit helps young people grow their advocacy skills, and schools could provide teachers and other offer school staff with more professional development opportunities to learn how to grow youth leadership. And that's all I have, and I'll be passing it back to Mondi, who will share her lessons for how Students Speak can translate into schools.
Thanks, Melina. Those are some great lessons. All right, Mondi, you're back. Good to see you. What are your lessons for how Students Speak could be adapted into the school setting?
Okay, so one idea that I'd love to share is a program in my school called Hawks Mentor, which I helped design. In this program, upperclassmen like juniors and seniors team up with trusted teachers to help younger students in academic classes. It's a great way for students to get support from peers who understand what they're going through, and it also helps teachers reach more students. School can offer more chances like this for students to help their schools and local communities. They can let students find problems and work on solving them. And it gives all students, not just usual leaders, a chance to lead and share ideas. School should also make every student feel accepted and safe to share their thoughts and backgrounds and ideas. That way everyone feels heard and included. And now I will pass it back to Mike, who will close us out with an interactive poll that will give you all a chance to share your voice in a small way. Wait, in a big way.
Awesome. Thank you, Mondi. Yeah, and that's absolutely right. We're talking so much tonight about voice, and you've been hearing our voices, but we want to use the last 5 minutes to give the audience just a little bit of a voice here at the end. And so we've designed a little poll activity. And what we have here is a QR code on your screen. And it should be pretty intuitive and easy to figure out. If you've got your mobile device with you, just scan the QR code and give us your answer to this question. What idea from today's presentation are you most likely to take with you? And so what we've just done is shared some of our lessons about how we imagine the kinds of things we're doing in Student Speak could translate into the school setting. But we know that would just be scratching the tip of the iceberg. And we know that you all will have your own creative ideas about how to take some of these principles, these ideas about relationships and equity and transparency and mentoring, and weave them into the school day. So please take a moment to scan the QR code and type in your answer. It's anonymous. And in a moment, when the poll starts populating, we'll share folks' responses on the screen so you can see how each other is relating to this content and the ideas that your colleagues might take back with them. And after we do that, then we'll be just about right on time, and we will close the presentation. You can see up here in the corner, it's showing us how many responses we have, and we're up to 5, but I bet we can get more, 6, 7, they'll start to pour in here. And actually we're up to 8. Why don't I start showing them? And we'll see what ideas folks are going to take with them. One person says involving older students as mentors and supports for younger students. So we have the luxury of graduate students at Harvard to have as mentors, but they don't have to be graduates. Oops, we lost it. It doesn't have to be graduate students. It could be just older students within the school. Students seeing themselves in relationships. Transparency. See, Ethan, somebody's taking your big idea away. That's great. Student-led clubs. Yes, that was your idea, Molina. And just the basic idea that student voices can make significant change. We've certainly seen that to be true. Just some of those examples we shared about the legislature and the bills that have been introduced are examples of that. I would like to create a school-level student voice initiative. That would be amazing. And working in a middle school, how can we allow voices to be heard in an honest and trusting space that eventually turns into change? I would say, for my part, that word trust in that question is really the crux of everything. It's one of the things that we're able to, frankly, do in a different way in an outside of school context, where we don't have all of the structure and all of the power dynamics that take place within the school building. I imagine that it might be more complicated to build that trust within the school setting, but it can be done. And I agree that that's really got to be the focus. Wow, these are some great responses. Maybe what I'll do is see if Marisa and Joe want to come in and join me on the stage here, and maybe you all are seeing some things in the responses that you'd like to lift up, and we can then sort of use that as a way to close things off. Joe, Marisa, what are you taking away from this?
Well, I think the hearing from the students and the way the information is presented, what I'm seeing here is, in addition to these specific things, is people's heads are now working. They are thinking, they're brainstorming, they're seeing opportunities. And I think that, to me, is just the most powerful component as I look at this, is all that, like, just idea generation.
Well, Joe, you stole my thunder. Great minds. That's exactly what I was thinking, is sort of like just the generative kind of responses that are coming up, there's always so much creativity among educators. Once you sort of plant a seed, they just grow. So it's very exciting for me to see how this has sort of sparked that thinking, sort of helped people continue to think. I'm sure there was already some, but this has been great.
Yeah. Is
Thank
there
you
a
both.
way?
And I guess the last thing I would point out is that one of the things we've heard about the Student Speak website is that some educators actually use it as a text, get their students reading some of the student testimony that's on there and watching the current conversation videos. And we've heard that it can be a really useful resource to use in class. So there's also that.
And is this a slide that could be shared with everyone?
The responses, Joe?
Yes.
Yeah, we can absolutely take the responses and make a PDF of them, and I assume get it out to all of those who participated today.
I think that'd be great.
Excellent. Well, I'll just close for YLab and for TLPI and really thank Lyft and Lesley University for inviting us to share Student Speak with everybody tonight, and it was really great to be with everyone. Thank you all.
Yeah, and thank you, Mike and Marisa, and in particular, Mondi, Melina, and Ethan. Your presentation clearly very thought-provoking, and really appreciate it. I also want to thank those of you who are with us on this beautiful summer evening, and cutting off some of perhaps your recreation early to join us. I really appreciate that. For those in our courses and leadership symposium that begin tomorrow, we'll see you in the morning. And to everyone else, we wish you a good rest of your summer. Thank you so much for coming, and thanks again to our presenters all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.